Welcome everyone to Supply Chain Canvas. We're going to see what conversational AI and agentic AI can do for you. Welcome. Today we're going to have Hari Menon, the co-founder and CEO of First Shift. He has decades of experience in supply chain planning and developing software to help companies make faster and better decisions. Grant Brantley is First Shift's head of pre-sales, and he has over a decade of experience helping teams translate complex supply chain planning challenges into high-impact solutions. Today's presentation will start off with a brief overview of First Shift and Supply Chain Canvas, and then Grant will get into going through some of those scenarios and an opportunity to see how First Shift Supply Chain Canvas operates, and then we'll end with any questions. And with that, I will turn it over to Hari.
Thank you, Amanda. Let me start with, so really appreciate all of you participating in this webinar. Today, you are going to see a presentation as well as a demo of Supply Chain Canvas, a product that First Shift has launched recently. The purpose of Supply Chain Canvas is to enable faster informed supply chain decisions in a volatile world. So as all of you know, supply chain volatility is here to stay. You've seen COVID, tariffs, war, even before that, weather-related disruptions, changes in consumer behavior that is pretty drastic, from TikTok videos to Instagram posts, changing how products are bought and sold. So First Shift's Supply Chain Canvas is intended to address the volatility with a much better supply chain solution. Just to give you a little bit of background on First Shift. First Shift is a Silicon Valley headquartered supply chain AI native supply chain planning company, founded in 2022. We focus on providing a cloud and AI native planning platform and solutions to both mid-size and upper Fortune 500 companies across industry verticals. We're very unique in that it's a evergreen cloud native platform that we upgrade every 2 months. The customers get the latest and greatest. We have integrations and partnerships with some leading providers. We have pre-built integrations into SAP, NetSuite, Microsoft Dynamics, etc., and then partnerships with AWS and some really large implementers as well. Institutional backing that allows us to kind of invest in R&D, and Supply Chain Canvas is a result of that. So as I mentioned, supply chains have never been more complex. As you know, the volatility is here to stay. Demand uncertainty is also with changing consumer prices, but also behaviors on the consumer side, the buying of, especially on the CPG side, but also on high tech. If you can see how volatile it is, you now have a massive build out of data centers, which drives the high tech supply chains. And so the traditional planning tools were built for a relatively stable environment where either you were vertically integrated, or even when we were outsourced, you had a lot more predictability that you didn't need dynamic planning as much as today. And then disruptions are pretty frequent today in terms of whether it is in the high tech industry or even in things like fertilizers. You have seen that recently with the blockage of Hormuz. You had Strait of Hormuz. You had fertilizer industry getting affected. So all of these are kind of ask for better capability on dynamic planning or dynamic scenario analysis. And today, if you look at even after 3 decades of supply chain planning investments, if you ask planners around your own organization as well as across the board, you'll say a lot of their time is spent on this number. 70% came from a couple of years old McKinsey report. It's 70% of your planner time is spent gathering and analyzing data. And it takes days or sometimes even weeks to run a single what if scenario. And planners today spend 3 to 5 times more time on tactical mundane tasks. Well, I would call it mundane only because they should be automated. And then they get very little value from data that is hidden, real nuggets that are hidden within their data. So in what First Shift has done is kind of taken a step back and looked at how planners operate and built Canvas with the understanding that you need both context and all the planning algorithms, the architecture needs to be correct, but also the appropriate context to be able to be delivered to the planners at the right time. The traditional vendors have built bolt-on AI onto their systems. There are AI native startups which have gotten the architecture right but don't have the domain knowledge. We believe we have a unique combination of the domain expertise, the contextual layer, as well as the architecture right. What supply chain canvas, the set of capabilities that supply chain canvas provides you is easy question and answer. You can ask any questions of your supply chain and get answers, whether it is inventory risk, whether it is supply availability, whether it is your demand trends. You can ask questions of your supply chain and get answers. You can run scenarios and get answers immediately. So, what if my demand went up a little? How does it affect my ability to supply that demand? Create You can create agents to automate your repeated workflows, whether it is generating an inventory report or executing a repeated task. Agents allow you to do that. So you could build agents that are supporting your day-to-day activity. And then you could run side by side options. You compare different options and see the full financial impact before making a call. All these abilities are supported by Canvas today. Um, what Canvas is built on is very powerful, combining powerful engines. The large language model obviously gives you the ability to convert natural language questions. It gives us the ability to convert natural language questions to structured queries or structured API calls that allow engines to do calculations and optimizations. The supply chain semantic model allows us to kind of map any customer's supply chain to a semantic layer that makes it easy for the AI to operate on. In-memory computing is the able gives us the power to kind of return sub-second answers when you ask questions, do the calculations, do the scenario simulations, and without making underlying changes, and do the analysis and provide you the results. All of it is on top of a context layer that starts with universal supply chain context, but you can add on the industry specific context, whether you are in the apparel and fashion industry, or you are in the in food and beverages or high tech industry. The contextual layer, there's a 4 layers of context: the universal supply chain context, the industry specific context, a customer specific context. So you have best practices, you have protocols that you need to follow, you have validation rules that you need to put in, and then runtime, where whether it's an agent or an end user asking questions or running an agentic workflow, there is a runtime context as well. So all of this is taken into consideration by the by Canvas, by the agents that are built within Canvas, by the questions that are asked within Canvas. All of them take this contextual layer into consideration. So what Canvas delivers is faster decisions, um, improved productivity. Planners can now spend time on doing real scenario analysis versus playing around with data or cleansing data, doing a lot of data manipulation. And because you see that in a lot of the, even when planning systems are implemented, a lot of the data is brought back into spreadsheets to do further analysis. We don't need any of that with Canvas. And then the planning to finance bridge. So whether you are in a sales and operations planning workflow, S&OP workflow, or you're doing analytics around what a financial impact be, whether it is a best case, most likely case, or a worst case scenario, you could do that analysis within Canvas. You can bring in external intelligence. We support publicly available data like weather, commodity prices, CPI, consumer price index, all of that. But you could also, if you're subscribing to other data that impacts your supply chain, that can be brought into Canvas. Canvas allows for agentic automation, like I said before, where you can build agents um, that act like your assistant, running frequently executed workflows and tasks so that you can focus on the more important, in the higher level strategic decisions. And Canvas is, if you're familiar with GPT or ChatGPT or any of the LLM, Claude or any of the tool, Gemini, any of the tools out there, you don't have any, no need for any new training. Ask a question in plain English and you can start from there. So some examples, I won't go into every one of them, want to leave enough time for Grant to do the demo as well as answer your questions. But real scenarios, supplier disruption, changes in demand, whether it is a demand increase or decrease, you can ask those questions and get answers. Then you can go take action on change your plan as you see fit. It covers every industry, like I said, because of the contextual layer. It doesn't matter what industry you are in. It uses your context to answer these questions. And our expectation is that this will allow 10 times faster in terms of decisions, um, much improved productivity, at least 100% productivity improvement. And we are able to deploy the software and provide the value in less than 6 weeks or start seeing the value in less than 6 weeks without any disruption to your existing system. We can integrate into your existing ERP system, and even if you have other planning systems, non-first shift planning systems, we can integrate into that to provide you the Canvas capabilities. And so following this, Grant will walk you through a few scenarios. Time permitting, we'll go through all of them and then leave enough time for questions and answers. We're really excited about this product, and we think it will have a transformational impact on the industry. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Grant.
Perfect. Thanks for the introduction, Hari. I'll go ahead and get started here. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to walk us through a few use cases with Canvas today. The first one here being looking at from demand all the way to financial impact of this. So what we're going to see is one continuous conversation with Canvas. So we're not changing screens, pulling up reports. We're asking business question in plain language, and then we're following the thread. the data that we have in this first use case is on consumer electronics planning, but the logic you'll see applies to any industry. So we're watching for the way that Canvas reasons, not necessarily the product names. To give a little bit of an introduction here on the first use case, what we'll see is we want to start where a planning team and notice that their forecast is off. So we want to investigate into that and drill down a little bit into where that forecast is off to find the root cause. And then from there, we'll also figure out and look at the exposure. Where might that be causing excess inventory? And then even turn that into a dollar value to figure out what is that actually costing us to do it. So we'll go ahead and jump in here with our first look at the screen on Canvas. And I do want to point out here, you'll notice this is a video. And the reason that we have that is because when I ask Canvas questions, it can take anywhere from 15 to 60 seconds to come through. So you'll see I'm following the exact same thread. I've just cut out some of that time in the middle with the response times. And that can depend based on the level of detail and the complexity of the questions. So with our first look here at our Canvas screen, you'll see that I get a couple of suggestions that we may want to ask. But we're going to start here with this conversation of, did we get the forecast right? So I'm not going to tell Canvas exactly where to look, but I want to start with a question about our supply chain. So where's our forecast most over or under? You'll notice here, one of the first things Canvas wants to do is clarify and make sure that it understands the thread. So if I'm not very specific on a question, then it'll make sure that it is understanding exactly where we're going with it. So looking at this from where are we over or under sales in the last 8 weeks? Now, across the entire portfolio, we're running about 6% under forecast, but the average is hiding the story. So one thing we'll see there is the Pro laptop 5550 is under forecast by 62%. So we sold roughly 11,400 units against a forecast of about 4,300. So that 7,000 units of demand we completely missed on one line. So notice here what Canvas did on its own. It didn't just flag the one product, but it also saw another product in the same family is under by 17% and noticed a family level pattern. So it's giving us a recommendation here to recalibrate the entire family, not just the one line. So from here, the next thought would be, okay, well, we see maybe where we're under forecast. Do we have specific customers that might be driving this specific sales uplift? So now I'm going to go through and ask Canvas about those customers that might be driving the uplift. And we'll see here that it's not just one account. It looks like here we're getting the card showing us where those accounts sit. We see a breakdown of the donut chart, but every single one of our 10 active customers is beating the forecast. So right there, we see it's more on the baseline. Canvas is drawing the conclusion for us here. When every account misses in the same direction, the problem isn't the customers, it's the baseline. So the model, we may need to go back and analyze. But there's a heavy head to it here where we have 2 accounts, looking at California and DC, for about 50% of the total uplift. Now we're going to switch over here from demand side to look more at the balance sheet because we expect that we'd have some extra inventory. We want to know where the financial impact of this and what it's actually costing us. So Canvas is coming back and telling us we do have a significant holding of about 285 million in inventory. Roughly 107 million of that is excess to our requirements. So that's 30% of our holding value tied up in stock that we don't need. So it's concentrated across gaming, consumer laptops, commercial notebooks, and the highest one there is our Pro Laptop P series with over $41 million sitting on 94 weeks of inventory. So it breaks it down for us there in the table, gives us all the products within those business units, tells us the overall average weeks of supply and the holding value, all in one table from the single question. Now, if we know what that total is across those different units, the next thing I might want to know is what locations are actually holding this largest share of that stranded inventory. Because we know the headline there, if we have $107 million on it, but we need to know where it physically sits for us to be able to act on it. So here we'll drill down into it. And we see here that we have all 3 sites in the US, about 2.75 million of holding costs, and Atlanta has the largest share at 54%, Austin at 35%, and Fremont at 11%. But if we look at the weeks of supply, because that's really where the watch out is here. Fremont is sitting on over 1,000 weeks of supply. So that's a lot of stock with our current sell-through rate. Atlanta is also better. It's at about 600. But this isn't really slow moving. It's effectively our obsolete. So Canvas is turning that into a decision for us here. We want to understand what that is financial impact. Now, we'll go back to looking at here for our forecasting and want to see what would happen if we ran a scenario here looking at over forecasting for just our largest customer by 5, 10, and 15%. So if we're too optimistic, what we can see is Canvas is going to run this scenario for us, not changing anything in the live plan. It's bringing it back to us. And it gives us a breakdown of all the different forecasts in the system. So from our sales manager, demand plan, consensus, and the consensus revenue. And it breaks it down even further into the months below it. So at 15% over, we see that's nearly 2,000 extra units and about 790,000 of inflated revenue signal cascading throughout the plan. So the danger is not just in the revenue line, but really what the inflated forecast is going to trigger downstream. So Canvas notices that we'll run the replenishment engine to build to it. Safety stock gets set too high, and we're going to manufacture too much product. So this is really where we sit with having too much product on hand. You'll also notice there towards the bottom that it even flags our 10% use case as being one of the most dangerous because of blended price swings in the week. And going through that, we see it's also cascading across all of the measures, right? So looking at the reasoning of the risk and figuring out where is it wrong, what does that do to our inventory impact, and then bringing that in from a financial perspective as well. So overall, what we saw in that use case going from the conversation is where is our forecast miss? How much excess inventory do we have on hand and the total cash at risk for one of our customers? And then going across the entire supply chain. So not just looking at one of those measures, but really all the way from demand to supply, the entire supply chain plan throughout the system.
Grant, I have a quick question. You showed that there's Canvas did not just report a 62% forecast miss, but it decided that it mattered and really kind of highlighted it. But can you explain a little bit what's actually happening under the hood? That how a genuine under forecast is separated from just noise?
Yeah, so Canvas is really doing reasoning here and understanding not just where we have maybe an issue with one of our products, it wants to point that out, but also does the reasoning to better understand it might not just be one specific SKU, but really the family as a whole that we need to do a recalibration on. So then the other ones, it's not going to find as important to really do the analysis on it. It wants to pinpoint you as to where to look at. So that's really where the variance comes in from Canvas and doing the reasoning and helping on the decisions rather than just providing pure information that you have to drill down further into.
Thank you. I had you went from what is wrong with the forecast, or what's wrong with the forecast, to which customer or who is causing it, and you saw that all 10 accounts were beating the forecast. How does that change what a planner kind of does on today on a Monday morning?
Yeah, so identifying that really helps us to figure out that it's broad-based across all of our customers. So we're not chasing one customer trying to look at the uplift just there. It's really something in the entire replenishment there. So it's looking more at really what kind of a problem do we have and what are the next steps. So it helps to identify that for the planner.
Okay. So essentially, Canvas is reasoning, and instead of so it's kind of understanding a trend across customers versus highlighting the one customer that has had the most change, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it can do both. It wants to point both out, but really highlighted it. Do you need to chase one customer, and figure out where your forecast may be incorrect there, or is it more across an entire family or the entire portfolio?
Okay. Thanks, Grant.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's our first use case that we'll look at, and we'll go ahead and move along to our next one here. Now, on this side, we'll see here we have a fulfillment-based use case that we'll see. Now, in this case, what we'll see is really more about the service failure for one of our biggest customers. So we want to know, is our customer actually being served? If not, then where are we short and what's the issue? So drilling down into it at this point, if we're not fulfilling demand, the obvious thought is we must be short or not have the inventory available. What we'll see here is Canvas helps us to identify it may not just be the inventory is not there, but also we've got different customer service requirements about shelf life for specific products. So we'll see how we bring that into play. So we'll go ahead and drill into the use case here. And we'll start with a simple question here that we might ask on a Monday morning as a planner. Really, are we serving our customers this week? Do we have the inventory to do it? So here I'm going to scope this to one product, and we'll look across two different distribution centers. And specifically just at 1 week that we'll go through here. Okay. Let me bring this up. All right, so we'll get started with our first question here, where I want to know about our kids' chocolate rice cereal. And I'm looking specifically at two distribution centers that I want to know about, and I want to look at the fulfilled demand versus the consensus demand for this coming week. And remember here, as we ask this question, that we'll also make sure Canvas might clarify for us if we want to look into it a little bit further, if it needs to further understand anything about the question. It is a bit of a broad question. If we were to scope it a little bit further, then Canvas could more fully understand, but it wants to make sure with the different measures that we have in the system that it starts the thread correctly. So looking if we're able to fulfill all of our demand here, Canvas is immediately coming back. We see a chart at the top, but then with our analysis that no, we're not filling all of the demand here. We plan to ship 953 units across the two distribution centers, and we only fulfilled about 72% of that. Now, Albany's at a 28% shortfall, Gulf Coast, about a 30% shortfall. So neither really came close to doing a full rate. And the miss rate's almost identical at both of those. So we assume maybe we ran out of stock at this, but this is where I want to look and say, okay, well, which customers did we not meet demand for on that specific week? And we'll come back here and see that we had 10 customers in scope, and 7 of those were fully met. So we get the different customers at their different locations. I can see each of those with the demand, the fulfilled. I get that broken down into a donut chart as well if I'd like to see it. But really that entire shortfall is concentrated on 3 accounts, but they're all Big Mart accounts. So I see the split between each of those. And I can see it's just the 2 worst served accounts make up 82% of the entire shortfall. So for our single biggest, most important customer is the one that we're failing. Well, it looks like we're fulfilling everything else. So why would the system not be meeting the demand there? So let's go in and ask. Now, since Big Mart's our biggest customer, we remember they do have a 150-day shelf life requirement on some of their products. So I'm wondering now, Canvas, can you help me to identify how much of that on hand actually meets this requirement? And here we see we have around 1,874 units on hand across the 2 DCs, with only about 14.6% of that meeting Big Mart's 150-day requirement. So the other 1,600 is sitting right there in the warehouse, but we can't ship it to them. So we were never actually out of stock. We were out of the stock that Big Mart could accept. So that single fact explains the entire service level gap that we started with. And Canvas didn't just hand us the inventory number, but it really went lot through lot, deciding against their specific eligibility rule. So this would then lead me to say, if I have different lots with different expiry dates on them, does it mean that they're all worthless? So I'm going to go in and say, what of those lots are the closest to the expiry and becoming a total loss? So we'll really drill down even further into those lots that Canvas has already identified. So here it's telling me where we have those lots in the actual units and the days of shelf life remaining. So it splits it out clearly into two different tiers here. There's a near-term group that expires on January 30th. That's only 18 days away. So there's really no realistic path to move those, and they're probably going to be a write-off. But there's a second group with 120 days of life out to May. So those are below Big Mart's threshold, but they're perfectly good for other customers that may have a lower shelf life requirement. So Canvas has spotted the root cause here and really identified that we may have expiring inventory here, but is that something that we could use for a different customer? So it's also telling the planner where they may want to go through and make some other decisions about it. So if this is going to be the case and we have to write it off, then we would also want to know from a financial perspective, what is the value on each of these? So it's going to bring back the actual cost on those different lots. What we'll see here, the numbers is roughly $400 of the inventory that expires on January 30th with no realistic way to recover it. So that's a near certain write-off. But the other tranche there, we see about 585 days of a 120-day stock that is salvageable if we reroute it in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So put together, that's close to $1,000 at risk on this one SKU. Against the total on-hand value of $2,400. So Canvas is telling us that 41% of that product's inventory value is impaired, but we need to act quickly to try to move some of it to be able to save that inventory that could go to another customer. So now what I'm going to do is I'd like to discuss this with my team. So I'm going to ask Canvas to provide me a summary of all of this so that we can gather that and discuss what our next steps are going to be. Okay, so here we get a summary. It's broken down by each of the different DCs with the inventory that we have on hand. About $1,000 of that on-hand cereal can't go to Big Mart. About $400 expires in 18 days, and the eligible stock we do have covers less than a third of a single week's demand. Now, the plan writes itself here and telling me act on the expiring lot today and reroute the 120-day stock to other customers this week. Then fix the upstream production specs so the next inbound lot arrives with enough shelf life to actually serve Big Mart. So we started with one single question: are we serving this customer? And the 6 steps we went from there, a vague miss to a dated dollar quantified action plan with the root cause traced back. So we didn't have to bring up any spreadsheets, evaluate it, analyze. Now I mentioned I want to share this with my team. So what I'm actually going to do is just take this summary and export it. You see, I just selected it there in Canvas. Now, and I opened the full summary that's already been brought into the PowerPoint format for me. So now I can present this to our team to help us to discuss what are these next steps and action points, and do we want to take it this way that has been proposed? Okay, so here's a little bit more of what we saw here. The numbers that we surfaced using Canvas to just ask through the questions and understanding that it's not necessarily we were out of stock, we were just out of the stock that we were able to use to meet Big Mart's requirements. So on that, Canvas also helped us to reason through the different action steps that we need to do next. Really pinpointed it for our planners and saved us the time of having to go through, dig through all of the information to find it, and then figure out what do we do with it next.
And I have a couple of questions. Can I ask them now?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. In the first use case, it was a consumer electronics use case where the risk was a working capital tied up in the form of inventory. And here, the use case is around more time, right? Like it is around shelf life. And how does Canvas change the context from reasoning about when the clock is the constraint versus the dollar value? What is important and what's more important in this scenario?
Yeah, so Canvas can do the reasoning itself to help to identify not only where the issue is, but maybe what's causing the issue, the root cause of it, right? So in this second example, it helped us to drill down into the lots and figure out that you have the inventory, so we don't need to worry about an inventory issue. What we need to worry about first is what do you do with this inventory that can't be met? And then also made the proposal, try to get as much inventory as you can that will meet their new meet their requirements for your largest customer there. So when you walk through the conversation, Canvas does the reasoning with you. It doesn't just pull back the information that you're asking for.
Got it. The other question I had was around how does it weigh? Canvas is flagging a lot as at risk. So you have a running demand. So it's weighing how much is on hand against how fast it is actually depleting the against the expiry date. So can you give a little bit of details around how it decides what is genuinely at risk versus what will clear on its own?
Yeah, so this is the piece where Canvas has access to everything within the system, right? So it's looking through all of the data. It's doing the reasoning around what is the customer specific shelf life requirements to help us understand it. So it's not just looking at one specific thread, but looking through the holistic view in the supply chain, right? So at that point, it can determine I need to go through and really look and pinpoint each of those lots and how that specifically matches up to where our customer requirements sit to help us to better understand the situation at hand.
So it's really going through all of the cascading calculations that it has to do from demand all the way to supply.
Exactly.
And the last question on this side, how does Canvas recommend once it finds an at-risk inventory, how does it recommend what to do after that?
In the same way, it's looking at for that inventory, that location, where do we fulfill the different customers? Which customers do we have available? And what are the shelf life requirements on it? So if you wanted to even dig further into that and determine, do we have any other customers that we might could serve from this specific location that this does meet the requirements, then it could help to better understand what that looks like and actually moving some of that inventory. So we already saw that it can also look at from the production side, do we have the actual lead time available to move some of this in to get it in time for our larger customer? So even the opposite direction of doing the fulfillment and looking at the customer requirements, it can do the reasoning there as well.
Got it. That's all I had on this one. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Then we'll look at one more use case before we open up the floor. And in this one, we want to look a little bit more into the agentic planning side. So far, everything we've seen has been me more asking Canvas questions live, but we know that planners don't really want to ask the same questions all the time. They can use it to help to drill down in specific cases, but if you have recurring use cases that you may want to analyze, then this is where agents come in, right? So we're looking not just here at a query tool, but some of the planning and reasoning behind it. Now, what we'll notice here when we come in is we start with Canvas, but on the top left there, I've got different agents that I've stood up already. So 4 different planning agents, each that own a recurring decision. So I have revenue concentration, forecast error, plan deviation, inventory health. These are just a few examples. Now, you also notice here that I have each of those that can be set to private. I can share them with different people in my company or make them public to all of the people. And so this is just who has access control to be able to see them. Now, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the revenue impact agent. So each agent has a clear purpose and a set of questions here that it's primed to answer. And we'll go through and see how this comes up and why. And this is looking through, I'm going to look into edit our revenue impact agent. So here I've provided a name, a purpose, a scope. And you see I've just typed in North America. I could type in North America for product family X, Y, or Z. So natural language, it can actually scope out what you want here. And then the default behavior I've put in a way where I'd say identify customers contributing to 80% of shipped revenue, short descending, show these columns, build a donut chart. And if I put all of those in, I'm going to go through and show preview of what the output is. So in natural language, I explained to it what I want it to do to help to build this preview report. Now, this report that you'll see that comes up is also something we'll see we can be emailed out automatically. Now, on this, to see, it's not just a raw dump, but it's pulling everything that we want from a customer analysis, looking at 80% of the contribution by customer and then by product as well. So I can tell it to do it with product, description, the group that it's in, the family, and the actual contribution. It's also bringing that up in the chart format for me that I specified for both customer and product. And then it's doing some reasoning that I asked it to do below as well. So you'll see there on the different descriptions of the customers and the products, and then the overall insights to that revenue concentration. Now, rather than having to come in and click this each time, you'll see I have the scheduler. So here, just in plain language too, I say every Monday at 9 a.m. is when I want it to schedule. It automatically puts that in. You could say once a week, once a day, the first Monday of every month, something along those lines. So on top of that, I say who actually want to receive this. So do we want them to send it out, or do we want planners to come in and actually just view it? So, and when you come in, you've got your inbox and you'll get the email of each one of these that you want to sign up for. So really going from asking questions to having Canvas run the analysis for you, so you can schedule when it happens, deliver it to the right people, and get the recommendation. And you can tailor these to be exactly how you'd like to for each set of scope and for each of the agentic purposes.
Grant, can I ask a couple of questions around the agents? So I'm assuming the agents kind of use the same context layer that FirstShift has. So how does an agent kind of stay smart over time? Like if new products, new fiscal calendar, different thresholds, how does the agent keep up with the underlying change in configuration and all of that?
So the agent is not doing a one-time query and following through. It's actually looking at updated data every single time that it runs. So this is not something that's external. It's really plugged in and has all of the information at hand. So looking back at whatever the purpose of the agent is, each time that you schedule it, it's going through and doing a full new analysis to help surface whatever the results are at the time.
So the agent is aware of the metadata, and then when the agent performs a task or runs a workflow, it is really using that metadata structure to get at the underlying real data.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
So you just built and scheduled an agent in under a minute in English. For someone who's never used the product, what's an agent? Can you describe what's an agent? Is it a saved query, a scheduled report, or is it more?
Yeah, so an agent can be multiple different things, right? So each agent's going to own its own recurring decision. So you could ladder that from simple standing analysis like revenue impact agent into more deeper monitoring and even multi-step work on a broader product. So it's not just one specific thing that we can set an agent up to do, but there's really multi-purpose to the agents.
Grant, I'm assuming that's the end of the demo.
Yeah, and I think we did pretty okay on time here if we wanted to open up the floor to some questions.
How does Canvas connect to our existing ERP or planning tools?
Yeah, so there is a integration layer, a ETL layer that is built into Canvas. So it allows us, there is a semantic model that Canvas maintains, and the ETL layer allows us to map um, the ERP or any planning content, any planning data schema to our semantic layer. That allows Canvas to operate from day one after implementation. There's no additional training required or anything. It is once it is mapped, then we'll be able to, once we bring in the data into our schema, we'll be able to run this Canvas. And the data integration can be set to be done on a daily, hourly, weekly, whatever basis you want the cadence to be, and Canvas will operate on top of that.
Great. What does Canvas need access to, and how is it secured?
So yeah, we are a SOC 2, as you saw, we are a SOC 2 uh, certified and GDPR compliant platform. So you don't have to worry about any of your data going out to a public cloud or public LLM. We take care of only a semantic layer being used in querying an LLM, but the real query happens. LLM just translates a natural language into a template that then we use internally to kind of go into the data and come back with the answers that you see and the summarization as well. So there is no security risk that you have to worry about. What was the first part of the question?
Just what it needs access to in order to be effective.
Oh, yeah. So all of the, for answering questions on, if you just on demand side, it will need the customer master, the location master, the transaction data, sales history data, etc. And traditionally, what you would feed into a planning system, that data would be what we would have to access. So it is master data and transaction data for if you're only interested in using Canvas for demand related workflows, demand related questions, then you need only the demand data. If you want to go across supply, you need to expose your inventory, your lead times, all of that to Canvas. Then it'll do all the calculations needed to when you run scenarios.
Great. Another question is, how long does it take to get up and running, and will there be a lapse between systems?
Uh, it takes, if it is a well, you have a standard ERP system from any of the known vendors, we have integrations into, or even if it is an ERP system where the data is reasonably good, Canvas doesn't take, like I said, 4 to 6 weeks to 4 weeks to get up and running with Canvas. Sometimes slightly more if we have to cleanse the data or make sure that it has all the data required. But it's the getting Canvas up and running is a few weeks of effort. And there's no as long as you can feed the data into Canvas on a regular basis, so there's no lapse in the data can be brought in, like I said, on an hourly basis, even more frequently if required. But our experiences, our early experience today is that uh, usually it is daily, but an hourly will give you, if you're in a real-time ATP available to promise kind of, you want to do available to promise kind of scenarios, then you might want to bring in data on a hourly basis. Yeah.
One of the other questions is, how is Canvas different from adding AI features from a different platform?
Yeah. So the big difference here is that Canvas is built AI native. When I say AI native, I know a lot of people say AI native. AI native means it understands the contextual layer that is needed. You can put your guardrails. You can put, um, if you try to do use an LLM on an existing software, you're basically feeding all of the information into an LLM and hoping that uh, LLMs are great, but hoping that the accuracy levels are high enough. In Canvas, we take care of all the validation underneath. So we constantly run a validation capability, a validation engine to make sure that the queries that you provide, the answers that you get are accurate. So there's a high level of accuracy that we maintain that you're not guaranteed out of an LLM. The other thing is that the semantics of the cascading set of calculations, for example, the way you calculate your inventory exposure might be very different from another company. So all of your semantics are understood by Canvas, whereas if you throw it out into an LLM, just an LLM without a lot of that context being fed into in a structured form, um, you might get hallucination out of the LLM. So the in Canvas we take care of a bunch of things: security, context, and also make sure that the accuracy levels are really high.
One of the questions is, can we customize the context for our own business?
Yes. So that's why I said there are four levels of context. So there's what we call as the universal context. That is all supply chain context in terms of definitions, descriptions of definitions of terminology, calculations, all of that is in the, if you think about a score model, so all of that context is in the universal context layer. Then there's a context layer for an industry. For example, in apparel, you might plan with style, size, and color. In another industry vertical, that style, size, and color doesn't mean anything. So that context difference is maintained in the industry context layer. And then the next level of context is your own context. You means your customer's context. So if you have a particular way of running your supply chain, you have certain best practices you need to follow, and all of that that can be maintained, and some validation rules and some guardrails you want to put in. Don't answer any question outside of the data that you have. You can say that. The beauty of using a canvas is that you could make it as broad as possible. You can say, go out into the internet, find the weather data, or you could feed the weather data through our Canvas's interface. And you could do that, but you could control both of that with the guardrails you put in. So the read-only capability of the internet is supported, of the public LLM is supported, but we don't send anything back to the public LLM from a customer data perspective. So we support the inbound part of it. To answer the question, your context can be added to the customer context layer.
Thank you. We have one question left, so if there are any others, be sure to get them in. The question is, I understand that Canvas will help with decisions. Is there plans to also automate certain actions via the agents?
Well, very good question. So the first release of our Canvas is, or what we call as read-only agents. Well, it was purposely done that way to make sure that our customers are comfortable with that. So Canvas today, or our agents today, can automate things like um, run multi-step workflows to generate a forecast, to generate a report, or generate an optimization plan. But we have a human in the loop process where you can then say, okay, go ahead and apply that. So the next release of agents will allow you to do even more complex workflows where it supports um, kind of writing back into the system or modifying the plan, etc. And we wanted to be careful before we launch that, as people get used to, don't want Our goal ultimately is a semi-autonomous planning where a lot of the things can be do in a set and forget mode. Like, for example, if you're a distributor with a large number of SKUs, 100,000 SKUs, and you have classified into ABC classification, we want the C items to be managed pretty automatically. Whereas you have a human in the loop for the B items and the A items in terms of inventory policy, in terms of setting thresholds, etc. So the agents are, and also on our hypercare side, once our planning systems goes in place or Canvas goes in place, even on the hypercare side, we have agents that constantly monitor and track uh, data issues and things like that. So we have a pretty rich roadmap for the agentic layer in terms of enabling semi-autonomous planning. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Thank you to both Hari and Grant for sharing with us today. We are going to wrap up today's presentation. It was recorded and we'll share it with all of you. So we encourage you to share that with your colleagues and spread the word about Supply Chain Canvas. And as always, you can learn more about First Shift and the platform at firstshift.ai. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you all. Thank you, Grant. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to. And please reach out to us. We will be even happy to do private previews, use your data to demonstrate some of the capabilities of Canvas if you are interested. Looking forward to working with some of you or all of you. Thank you.